You know, turning 70 changes the way you see things. After working hard for decades, raising a family, and finally stepping into retirement, I thought the hard part was over. But what I didn't expect was how easy it is to keep spending money out of habit. Not because I need things, but because I was used to buying them. Today, I want to share 9 everyday things I stopped buying after retiring. Not to tell you what to do, but just to share what helped me find more peace, save money, and focus on what really matters in this chapter of life. 1. Buying food in bulk. Back when the kids were still living under my roof and I was working full-time, buying groceries in bulk just made sense. I'd head to the warehouse clubs with a big cart and even bigger plans, stacks of canned soup, huge bags of rice, paper towels for months. It was cheaper by the ounce, sure, and it gave me a strange kind of comfort. Stocking up felt like preparing for whatever life might throw our way. But after retirement, well, life slowed down. The kids moved out. I stopped eating 3 big meals a day. And one day I opened the pantry and saw food I had forgotten I even bought. Some of it expired, some of it stale, some of it just sitting there taking up space I didn't need filled. That's when it hit me. Buying in bulk wasn't saving me money anymore. It was costing me, not just in dollars, but in waste, in clutter, in energy. You see, when you're younger, you're feeding a family, you're thinking long term. But in retirement, the rhythm changes. I don't need a 5-pound bag of flour anymore. I need just enough for a quiet Sunday morning pancake breakfast, maybe with my grandson if he's around. I also realized that as I've gotten older, I need to eat fresher, not just for my health, but because I want to enjoy the little things more. A fresh tomato from the farmer's market, a small loaf of good bread I can finish before it goes stale. There's beauty in buying less, but choosing better. And let me tell you, my pantry, it finally feels peaceful. I can see everything I have. I'm not digging through layers of long-forgotten cereal boxes or mystery cans. It's tidy, simple, and calm. So if you're like I was, still buying enough oatmeal to feed a school cafeteria, I invite you to pause and look around. Ask yourself if all that bulk is serving you now, or if it's just an old habit that no longer fits this chapter of life. I'm not saying don't plan ahead or be prepared. That mindset never leaves you. But sometimes, buying just what you need today can bring a kind of quiet joy that a giant pack of freezer-burned chicken, never will. Number 2, daily coffee runs. For nearly 40 years, my mornings started the same way. Alarm clock at 6, quick shower, and a stop at the local coffee shop before heading into work. It became routine, like brushing my teeth. I'd grab a medium roast, maybe a muffin, and be on my way. It wasn't even about the coffee after a while. It was comfort, a habit, a piece of familiarity in a fast-moving world. When I retired, I kept going. Even though I no longer had a job to rush to, I'd still get in the car and drive to the same shop. I'd sit there longer, look out the window, maybe read the news on my phone. It felt like I was still connected to the world somehow. But after a few months, something made me stop and think. I looked at my bank statement, just a routine check, and realized I was spending more than $100 a month on coffee. That's over $1,200 a year, on something I could easily make at home. It's funny how we hold on to routines, even when they don't serve us anymore. I wasn't really going for the coffee. I was going because I didn't know what else to do with my mornings, because I missed the rhythm of being needed somewhere. So I made a small change. I bought myself a good little coffee maker, nothing fancy, just something reliable. I started brewing my own cup in the morning, sitting on the porch and listening to the birds. And let me tell you, it tasted better. Not just because of the beans, but because it was mine. A small ritual I created for this new season of life. Now, don't get me wrong. I still enjoy going out for coffee once in a while, especially when I meet up with a friend or my daughter. But it's no longer a daily routine I blindly follow. It's a choice, And that makes all the difference. So if you're still buying that daily latte out of habit, just ask yourself, is it really about the coffee? Or is there something else you're reaching for? Maybe what you're craving isn't caffeine, but connection, routine, or comfort. And sometimes you can find all of that right at home for a whole lot less. 3. Subscriptions I forgot I had. It started with just one or two. A streaming service to watch old movies, a magazine I thought I'd read every month, a fitness app my son recommended, though I never quite figured it out. Over time, I signed up for more than I realized. A cloud storage plan, a digital crossword app, something that promised better sleep. It all sounded useful at the time, and each one only cost a few dollars a month. But here's the thing, those few dollars add up fast. I wasn't paying attention. They were automatic, quietly slipping out of my account each month like little leaks in a boat I didn't even know was sinking. One afternoon, while checking my bank statement, I noticed a charge I didn't recognize. That led me down a rabbit hole. I made a list of every subscription I was paying for. There were 12. 12. And out of those 12, I was only really using 3. So I sat down with a cup of tea and started canceling. Some were easy, others took a few clicks. A few tried to guilt me into staying with words like, "Are you sure you want to miss out?" But I pressed cancel anyway. You know what happened next? I didn't miss a thing. Not one. My days went on. My peace increased, and I saved more than $500 a year without changing anything else. These days, I'm more careful. If I sign up for something new, I set a reminder to review it in 30 days. And I ask myself, does this bring me joy? Does it add real value to my life? If not, it goes. I think for many of us, especially after retirement, it's not the big expenses that weigh us down. It's the small silent ones that we forget to notice. Subscriptions are like dust. They gather quietly until suddenly you can't breathe. Take a look at yours. Not because you're broke, but because you deserve to spend your money on things that truly matter. Experiences, time with loved ones, a good book, a walk in the park, things that don't require monthly fees. Number 4, holiday decorations I don't need. There was a time when decorating the house for the holidays was one of my favorite things to do. Back then, the kids were small, the house was full of energy, and every season brought its own kind of magic. I had bins for Halloween, bins for Thanksgiving, bins for Christmas, you name it. There was even a plastic snowman taller than my youngest, and he lit up the whole front yard like Times Square. But then the years went by. The kids moved out, the big family gatherings became fewer, and the decorations, they just stayed up in the attic, quietly collecting dust. Every year, I'd pull them down out of habit, set everything up, then pack them away again, sometimes without even turning on half the lights. One year, I stood there in the garage, staring at 6 big plastic totes labeled Christmas. My back ached just thinking about hauling them all inside. And suddenly I thought, why am I doing this? Not because I didn't care about the season, but because I had been decorating for a version of the holidays that no longer existed. So I made a choice. I opened each box, one by one, and picked out only the items that truly meant something to me. The little wooden nativity my daughter made in 2nd grade, the knitted stocking with my name on it, a snow globe from a trip my wife and I took to Vermont decades ago. The rest? I gave away to a local church and to young families who were just starting their own traditions. I didn't stop celebrating. I just stopped overdoing it. Now, during the holidays, my house is still warm, still inviting, but much simpler. A few candles, a wreath on the door, and always, always, a pot of cider on the stove. There's peace in letting go of the clutter. There's freedom in not feeling like you have to recreate the past every year. The memories don't live in the decorations. They live in your heart and in the quiet moments you make space for. So, If you're still dragging out boxes you don't even enjoy anymore, maybe ask yourself, what traditions are you keeping out of joy and which ones out of guilt? You might find, as I did, that the simpler holidays are often the sweetest. 5. Health products that promise too much. I'll be honest, getting older comes with its aches, its stiffness, and more than a few days where the body just doesn't cooperate. So when you see an ad promising pain-free living, miracle joint relief, or boost your brain overnight, it's easy to feel tempted. I've fallen for a few of those. A bottle here, a supplement there, something I read about in a magazine that seemed worth a try. They always sound so convincing, don't they? All natural, doctor approved, used by thousands. The packaging is slick, the promises are big, and the price? Just enough to seem affordable, but steep enough to feel like a real investment. I'd try one thing, then another. At one point, I was taking 8 pills a day, none of them prescribed by my doctor. I wasn't sure if they were helping or not, but I kept taking them just in case. Until one day I sat down with my primary physician and showed him everything I was using. He looked at me and said, gently, "Frank, most of this isn't doing you any good. Some might even be harmful." That moment hit me hard. I realized I wasn't taking control of my health. I was chasing hope through marketing, spending money on fear. Fear of getting older. Fear of losing control. Fear of becoming dependent. After that, I cleared out my medicine cabinet. I kept only what I truly needed: prescriptions, a few vitamins, and the occasional aspirin. I started focusing more on walking daily, eating whole foods, and getting good sleep. And honestly, I felt better than I had in years. I'm not saying all supplements are bad, but if you're spending hundreds of dollars a year on health products because of flashy promises and emotional ads, it might be time to pause. Ask your doctor. Trust science, not slogans, because true health at our age isn't found in a miracle bottle. It's in the small, steady habits we build every day. It's in asking for help when we need it, not reaching for a label that says anti-aging. You deserve to feel well. But you also deserve the truth, and not every company out there is interested in giving you that. 6. Eating out just because I'm lonely. When I first retired, I thought I'd enjoy the slower pace, and I did for a while. But after a few months, the silence started creeping in. The house was quiet, too quiet. Meals felt like tasks instead of moments, and I found myself looking for excuses to get out of the house, so I started going out to eat more. At first, it felt harmless. A sandwich here, a breakfast there. I'd sit in the same booth at the diner, nod to the waitress, pretend to read the paper. It gave me a sense of routine, a little noise, a little human interaction. But eventually, I realized I wasn't eating out because the food was better. I was doing it because I didn't want to be alone. And let me tell you, those meals add up fast, not just in dollars, but in calories too. I gained weight, my energy dropped, and I still felt that emptiness after the meal ended. One day, I bumped into my neighbor, Joe. We hadn't talked in months. We started walking together in the mornings. Then once a week, we'd trade off making lunch at each other's place. Nothing fancy, just soup, sandwiches, maybe a salad. But the conversation? That was the best part. I also started inviting my daughter and her family over more. Sometimes I'd cook. Sometimes she'd bring takeout. Either way, the house felt alive again. If you're eating out several times a week, ask yourself, are you really hungry, or are you hungry for connection? There's nothing wrong with enjoying a good meal at a restaurant, but when it becomes a substitute for companionship, it might be time to look a little deeper. You don't have to be alone. There's someone who would love to share a meal with you. Maybe a neighbor, an old friend, or even a grandchild who'd love to hear your stories. Reach out, cook something simple, and let the food be the excuse and not the goal. Some of my favorite meals now are made in my own kitchen. Not because they're gourmet, but because they're shared. 7. Lottery tickets and little gambles. I still remember the first time I bought a lottery ticket. It was back in the 80s. I was standing in line at the gas station, and the guy in front of me scratched one right there on the counter and won $50. He let out a cheer like he hit the jackpot. I figured, what the heck, I'll try one too. Of course, I didn't win anything, but something stuck. Not the gambling, really. I've never been to Vegas, never touched a poker table. It was more the idea of maybe. That small rush, that $2 dream of what if. What if I win just enough to fix the car, or take a vacation, or pay off the house a little faster? When I was younger, it was a once-in-a-while thing. But after retirement, it became easier to justify. It's only a few dollars, I'd tell myself. Cheaper than a movie ticket? Less than dinner out. I wasn't buying tickets because I needed the money. I was buying them because they gave me something to look forward to. Even if it was just for a few minutes while scratching that little card in the car. At one point, I was spending about $20 to $30 a week on lottery tickets. That doesn't sound like much. But over a year? That's over $1,000. Money that could have gone to better groceries, a new mattress, or even a trip to see my sister I hadn't visited in years. And worse than the money, it started to feel like a habit I couldn't really explain. It wasn't fun anymore. It was just part of my routine, like brushing my teeth or checking the mail. One day, I looked in the glove box and found a pile of old losing tickets I had tossed in there, just sitting there like ghosts. And I thought, what exactly am I chasing? Because the truth is, the odds are never in your favor. I knew that. We all do. But when you're retired, with more quiet time than you know what to do with, sometimes hope gets repackaged as entertainment. And that's when I knew I had to make a shift. I didn't stop cold turkey, but I set limits. 1 ticket a month, no more. Not out of fear, but out of awareness. I also started tracking how much I was saving. I created a little jar on my kitchen counter labeled Real Wins. Every time I would have bought a ticket but didn't, I put the same amount into that jar. After 6 months, I had almost $300 saved, and I used it to visit my grandson in Colorado. Let me tell you something. That hug from him was the best prize I've ever won. So if you find yourself reaching for scratch-offs every week, just pause and ask, what am I really buying? Is it the ticket or the feeling of possibility? Because there are other ways to find hope, to feel excited, to have something to look forward to. Try calling a friend you haven't spoken to in a while. Plant a tomato. Learn something new. Bet on yourself, not the lottery. Hope is a beautiful thing, but you don't have to pay for it with a losing ticket. 8. Fancy grooming or makeup products? You know, there was a time when I really cared about appearances. I had the cologne, the aftershave, the electric razor with 5 different settings. I kept my hair combed just right, my shirts pressed. I even bought those expensive face creams that promised to make me look 10 years younger. Some of it was for work, some of it was vanity, and if I'm being honest, some of it was for her, my wife. She never asked me to be flashy, but I wanted to look nice for her. And I guess that stuck with me, even after she was gone. After I retired, though, I kept up the routine for a while. Out of habit, mostly. I'd still pick up that $25 shaving cream or that fancy brand of moisturizer at the pharmacy, even though I couldn't really tell the difference. It was like I didn't want to admit to myself that I had changed, that life had changed. One day I was getting ready to head out to the grocery store. I was standing in front of the mirror, trying to smooth down the same spot of thinning hair I'd been fighting with for years. I had a drawer full of products I barely touched anymore, but somehow I still felt like I needed them. Then I looked at myself, really looked, and thought, What am I doing all this for? No one's judging me at the grocery store. No one cares if I look 10 years younger. And even if they did, I've earned these years. Every wrinkle has a story. Every line came from laughter or worry or staying up late to care for someone I love. Why am I trying to hide that? So I made a change. I gave away what I didn't use. I kept the basics: a good razor, a bit of aftershave, a bar of soap that smells like something real, like pine or clean linen. Now I groom because it feels good, not because I'm trying to look like someone I used to be. And let me tell you, I feel more like myself now than I ever did with a drawer full of expensive creams. This applies to all of us, men and women. The beauty industry spends billions of dollars convincing us we need to look younger, shinier, smoother. But aging isn't a problem to fix. It's a blessing. We're not supposed to look like we did at 30. We're supposed to look like people who have lived. So if you're spending more than you should on makeup or grooming products, trying to turn back the clock, take a deep breath. You're enough, exactly as you are. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. And let me tell you something else. The people who love you, they love you, not your moisturizer. 9. Buying small gifts for the grandkids. Every visit, I love my grandkids more than I can put into words. They're smart, kind, full of life. Watching them grow up is one of the greatest joys of this stage in life. And like many grandparents, I used to think it was my job to spoil them a little, to make up for all the years I worked too much and saw my own kids too little. So every time they came over, I had something ready. A toy, a book, candy, something small. And every time I visited them, I stopped at the store first. It became a habit, a way of saying, "Grandpa loves you." At first, they lit up when they saw what I brought. But after a while, I started noticing something different. They'd take the toy, say thank you, and then move on. It wasn't ungrateful. They were always polite. But the gift didn't mean much anymore. It was just part of the routine. Expected. One day, my youngest granddaughter said something that stayed with me. I showed up with a small plush animal I thought she'd love. She smiled and said, "Thanks, Grandpa, but can we just play cards instead?" That stopped me in my tracks. She didn't want things. She wanted me. That night I looked around my house and saw a pile of little toys, half-used art supplies, wrappers from candy I shouldn't have given them in the first place. And I realized I wasn't giving them memories. I was giving them clutter. So I stopped. Not because I loved them less, but because I finally understood what they really needed. Time, laughter, my full attention, a silly story, a walk in the park, a shared bowl of popcorn, and an old movie. Now when they visit, we bake cookies. We draw with crayons. We build puzzles. I teach them how to play dominoes, like my grandfather taught me. And I see the difference in their eyes. They're not excited because of what I bought them. They're excited because they get to be with me. That's the kind of love that doesn't break, doesn't wear out, and doesn't end up in a donation bin a year later. So if you're spending money on little gifts every time your grandkids come around, ask yourself what you're really giving. If it's love, you don't need to wrap it. Just show up, be present, and let them know they matter. They won't remember every toy you bought, but they'll remember how you made them feel. That's the gift that lasts. What I gained by letting go. You know, people always think that when you stop buying things, you're losing something. But in my experience, it's the opposite. When I stopped buying in bulk, I gained space in my home and peace in my kitchen. When I quit those daily coffee runs, I gained quiet mornings on my porch, the kind where you can actually hear yourself think. When I let go of the habits that didn't serve me, the clutter, the noise, the distractions, I started to hear something I hadn't heard in a while. My own voice, my own needs, my own rhythm. I'm 70 now. I don't need to impress anybody. I don't need more stuff. What I need and maybe what you need too, is clarity. Clarity about what really matters at this stage of life: health, connection, simplicity, and time. Not more things, just more moments that feel like home. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop spending on things you don't need, you make room. Not just in your wallet, but in your life. You make room for a visit with your grandson, room for a walk with an old friend, room to sit down with a cup of tea and feel just for a moment completely at ease. So, if you've been holding on to spending habits that no longer serve you, maybe now's the time to let them go. Not because you're being frugal, but because you're being free. And that, my friend, is the kind of wealth that never runs out.